everybody, and welcome back to Wealth as a Team Sport. For those of you who are new, welcome. I am very excited about my guest today. Patricia Hinnen works with Capital Sisters, and this is actually the charity I've chosen to, I'm going to share some of my profits from my book with this charity because I believe in it this much. It's really going to be an exciting discussion we're going to have today because Patricia has found a way to combine social work, social justice, and finance in a way that's a win-win for everybody. So kind of whatever your space is, there's going to be some really neat things you're going to learn today. And I'm very excited to share it with you. For those of you who are new to this podcast, you might be kind of going, so why is a financial person having this kind of an interview series? And I think in a larger picture, life is hard enough. And there's a lot of things we have to learn. And there's lots of mistakes that we can make. And anytime we get a chance to learn with an expert from their field, you're just going to pick up really good nuggets that you're going to be able to take and put into your life and make really good things happen. Because, you know, abundance is so much more than just money. And it's all these different pieces coming together. So that's why every show that you listen to, we have a different type of guest in a different field talking about different things. And, you know, for me, I'm known as the advisor who helps people achieve and retain the lifestyle you want. And for me, it all starts with relationship building. And so with this kind of podcast interview, I know as you go through the series, you're going to connect with different people and go, oh, that's the one I really want to connect into my bubble and my world and with what you have going on in your life. So that's what this series is all about. And trust is like one of those key ingredients to building good relationships. And that's why I'm so excited to have you meet Patricia. And let me just read her bio so that you can see what I'm talking about. So Patricia established Capital Sisters International. It's a nonprofit investment fund in order to finance business loans for impoverished women in developing countries and promote gender lens investing. And we're going to talk about that if you haven't heard that before. She created the first women's bond in the world. And what this does is it enables the general public to invest in microloans. Each $1,000 zero interest bond finances 10 business loans, and then the investor gets their money back, or they can reinvest again in more women. So Patricia launched the investment fund after decades of experience in international development and the microfinance industry, the U.S. Congress, and the State Department, where she represented the United States in 21 Asia Pacific Economic Forum for 10 years as head of the APEC Women Leaders Network. Patricia has raised $12 million in loan capital, half from donations and half from the bond sales under the Capital Sisters umbrella, financing 120,000 women's business partnerships in a dozen microfinance institutions in 25 different countries. So there's a lot more to unpack there. And Patricia's full bio, we're going to be posting it so you can read the whole thing because she is just one of these amazing individuals that you get to meet. And now you're going to get a chance to meet her too. So welcome, Patricia.
Thank you so much. Tara, it's great to see you.
So, you know, it's been a while, you know, with the pandemic, we haven't got to connect as long, but I keep following you, you know, through social media and keeping up and donating every year. But I want to jump right in. So you have this long list of acknowledgments and then also appointments because you've been recognized for the work. And we all know that hard work gets you more hard work. So
yeah, that's true.
And in this sphere of promoting economic empowerment for women. But can you just kind of tell us, like, how did you go from being, you know, a young girl to ending up doing this work, changing the world? Kind of let us know what that journey was about.
Well, my husband and I joined the Peace Corps in Africa long time ago. And, the idea was to, you know, experience the world and come home and live a regular life. Well, it's really changed us. It changed us for life. We were in a coup in West Africa, and then we transferred to Southern Africa, where we lived in Lesotho, which is surrounded by, at the time, apartheid South Africa. So I went from this revolution to this area where we were just starting the divestment movement to take all of the investment capital out of South Africa. So between that and my work with market women in the inner city, poverty-stricken markets, where the predatory moneylenders were charging them 20% a day we called them 5-6ers. They'd loan the ladies $5 and get $6 back at night. So between that and the divestiture movement, I knew that the capital markets could help solve the poverty issue and level the playing field for women. The major issue really was the women had no access to traditional financial services. So they were, they live on less than $3 a day, and they're dependent on predatory money lenders. And the money that they do make, they're vulnerable to being robbed and cheated and everything else. So that's really what changed my life. I came home and decided that maybe I would look at systems change and work for Congress. I did that for 20 years, including a posting in Frankfurt, where I had the East European and Soviet issues. So mixing all of this up, the democracy, the divestiture, the predatory money lenders, it felt to me like I was being called to do something a little different. I was with the State Department for many years, representing public policy issues around access to finance for entrepreneurs. And what I realized is that in spite of billions of dollars in international aid, we really weren't even touching the tip of the iceberg. We had to really get the money in the hands of the women who are, the best person to be in the driver's seat of their own life. So this is why I left my career and started this investment fund, was really to give women access to finance. I think something like less than 2% of international aid goes to females. It's similar to venture capital, as you know. There just aren't enough women being given access to finance to grow their businesses. So, of course, I do the $100 business loan, but for the woman who has the $100 business loan, it's every bit as important as venture capital in the United States. So that's really how it all evolved. I saw the issue. I saw that it was systemic in nature. And then I tried the public policy route, and it wasn't, they weren't targeting women. They were targeting major development projects that employ men. And so I decided just to carve out this piece for women.
And I don't know if you remember, but when I first met you, you shared a story about being in Africa and just kind of watching, like, what at the end of the day, when the predatory lenders were coming to collect on their loans, and you weren't allowed to even help at all. Do you remember that story?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll never forget it. I was helping the market women. I was trying to raise money to build them toilets and a well in the marketplace. And one of these guys showed up, and initially I thought it was domestic violence, but then I saw that he was driving a Mercedes. So clearly he wasn't married to anybody who I worked with. And so one of the old wise women, when I said, is that a pimp? That was the only other conclusion I could come up with. She said, "No, honey, it's the pimp's first cousin. It's the money lender."
Oh, no.
So that was really my, initiation into all of this.
And it seems like that's kind of what drove you to have to look at system solutions, because you weren't able to help at that level. And how frustrating.
Well, yeah, I mean, they back in the day, they called it the Pan Am Award. You did anything wrong as a Peace Corps volunteer, you got on the next Pan Am plane out of there.
Oh, boy.
So I felt like if I intervened, I could get in a lot of trouble. And it was very hard to stand there and watch that whole thing happen.
Right.
Very hard.
Now, can you just take a minute and just kind of explain, because I think people are starting to get more familiar with this, but why does it help everybody when women have economic parity? Because, there's a lot of people that are like, well, how does giving somebody a handout help me or help the economy? It's just giving, it's that teach a person to fish kind of an idea. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, it's a lot more sustainable, obviously, than welfare or international development. If a woman has a business, she can take care of her own family, take care of her own children. So it's hugely sustainable, and it makes sense. I mean, they should have access to finance. Most of the women we fund are probably in the informal sector, and there's a lot of economic activity that happens there. In some countries, it's more than, it's the majority of the economic activity. So the whole culture benefits. And because women are so creditworthy, our clients, our borrowers pay back at 98, 99%. It's unbelievable. And these are collateral-free loans. There's no collateral to back them up, and they still pay back because they're jointly responsible for the loans. If one woman doesn't pay back, the other women have to pay her loan. So this is why we have a 98, 99% repayment rate. And the beauty of all of that is that the women turn around and put 90% of their profits back into the family and the community and the business. So it's not just consumed and spent off in irresponsible ways. It's actually building community. And
so it sounds like it's actually helping the community, so that they're building like a social safety net just with their businesses and how they're reinvesting in themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So they're taking care of themselves.
That's amazing. So kind of then with that background, what does Capital Sisters really do then?
So we're a financial intermediary. I raised investment capital, and then I on-lend it to nonprofit partners in the field. And then they turn around and make $100 loans on our behalf with commercial interest rates. And they provide wraparound services, we call it. So they provide business training, they provide health education, and sometimes health services, and they help them access markets and so forth. So they, when the women pay back, then the partner in the field gives us our capital back, no interest. That's our way of subsidizing these low, the base of the pyramid. There's no way you can make a profit, nor would I, off of the people who are the poorest of the poor, which is women largely. Majority are women and children. So that was the model we decided to use, and we finance the bonds. We finance the microloans with bond capital, and we pay for the loan management with donations. Because we don't earn interest on the capital, we rely on donations to cover our banking expenses, basically due diligence and fees and staffing and so forth. So that's the way it works. It's what we call blended capital. I don't know if you've had any sessions on that, but that's a really innovative idea now that we're all part of, and it's called blended capital, where you have either lower interest payments, or you have zero interest payments. You have philanthropy, maybe subsidizing a portion of it. So it's part philanthropy, part investment capital, called blended capital. And really, that's the only way that you're going to reach people who are the poorest of the poor, because it's a lot more expensive to do that.
Right. And so it's combining that, doing the right thing, but you've created a way though that people can invest their money, and it's not just, it's different than just a donation that they don't see again. So it's
right. In fact, we have what we call a social dividend. And that is, it's a package of information that every investor gets on the 10 women that they financed for every bond. For every $1,000 bond, you finance 10 women, you get a report about the women, about their businesses, some photos, some stories. And that's what we call the social dividend. Since you're not earning interest, you get a social dividend, which shows you the impact that you've had in that particular village.
So that's a great place, especially for the people that are sitting out there that have, a couple $1,000 that's just kind of sitting in the bank. They're not sure what to do with it. It's not life-changing money for them. That money could go and sit for a few years with you. And then at the end of whatever, 5 or 10 years, they would get the money back if they wanted to.
That's right. And we have a long list of people who want bonds. And right now we're the only people that we're selling them to are people who are donors. So if you've got skin in the game, you've been a donor to help us build the infrastructure, then you have access to the bond capital. This is how we manage to pay our loan management expenses, because if we just offered the bonds, which initially we considered doing, we were overwhelmed with demand for the bonds. Everybody wants a bond. And because it's a lot of people from the investment community, they're already thinking, well, I'm not getting any interest. Why do I also have to donate? So it takes a lot of explaining. On the other hand, the people from the donor community are like, well, I used to give it to you and not get it back. Now you're telling me I get it back. So if they donate a little bit to help with the loan management, and then they invest in the bonds, they get the bond capital back, and they get a tax benefit on the donations.
And I love that, because I know with my business and finance, I have to meet people where they are. And so, as we go through life, we have our financial baggage that we had from growing up and our different experiences. And in money, you can get wrapped around the axle about, well, I don't want to be a chump, and what's my rate of return going to be? And I love how Capital Sisters has taken this way to say, okay, you can donate, and we need you to donate, but you can also do the bond, so that people can start to kind of baby step their way into the social investing. And I love how you've created this way that you can do the bonds and the grants and pairing that up so people can start to go, okay, I've done well, and here's how I can give back in a way that's going to keep creating that. So what an amazing way you figured out how to meet people where there are. What values do you feel like you have that kind of drove you to kind of create this innovative way, like the blended investing? What was it in you that helped create that model?
Well, I think after working in the international sector where I saw that, billions of dollars were going into development and not really helping women very much, I decided that this microfinance idea was a really powerful one as a way to, allow women to participate in the economic system. But there's no way that philanthropy can manage that level of demand. Right now, we're only reaching about 15 to 20% of the women who need a microloan. In order to meet that level of demand, you really have to access the capital markets. And so that's really that whole South Africa divestiture experience. I realized that there are a lot of people who want capital to do good and to leverage change. And so very few products out there have a gender lens. Very few. We're one of a handful. So I felt like, we got to use the capital markets. We've got to emphasize capital preservation. So I only partner with the top performers in the industry. We do extensive due diligence. I think having been a congressional investigative auditor for 20 years gave me a good perspective on what can go wrong. So, and we've had, excellent repayment until very recently with Afghanistan. Sadly, the Taliban took over the bank account, and fortunately, we have political risk insurance. But we're hoping that the women hadn't yet paid back their loans and that they're still holding that cash and using it to live and maybe preventing them from having to sell their daughters. That's my hope, is that the timing was such that the capital we have in Afghanistan is still with the borrowers. Which is great. The thought that the Taliban might get that is just too much for me to think about. But we have, capital preservation is at the center of everything we do. And the women aren't asking for charity. They're just asking for a level playing field. They want access to finance, but they don't have access because they don't have assets. They don't have assets because they don't have property rights. So, and then the other piece of it, I think I've shared with you, is that because so many of these cultures for centuries have favored the boy child, we're missing about 200 million females right now in places like India and China, where you should have 50-50 ratio for gender. You have a significant imbalance because girls are considered a burden to the family. And it's really so tragic that to even think about. So that's the other thing, is to stop the femicide, they call it, genocide of females, is to, because they are a huge asset. They're resourceful, they're resilient, they're committed, they want to care for their children. And so this is our way of trying to, bust the myth that a female is a burden to your family. I think there's an old Chinese saying that, feeding a girl is like watering your neighbor's garden. It's so embedded in the culture, sadly.
That's powerful. So you've pulled out of Afghanistan. How did you end up, because you did some work in Africa, but now you're in Guatemala and the Philippines. How did you migrate to those countries at this time?
Well, we've served in 25 countries. I cherry picked the top 3, one in Asia, one in Latin America, and one in Africa. Unfortunately, the one in Africa wasn't quite ready for prime time for investment capital. I'm really, really strict on who I partner with. They have to be as good as the banking sector to get our capital. And unfortunately, the one in Africa didn't have sufficient central, like management information systems and sufficient audits and internal controls. So we're hoping they're on the wait list. We're hoping that they'll get there because Africa is so special to me. So, and then of course, Afghanistan, the minute the Taliban fell, we all wanted to go in and make a difference over there. So we funded for 20 years. And my hope is that those women and girls are strong enough to sustain this crisis, this tragedy that's happening. Right. So now we're looking at going into a third country, and we have to do really significant due diligence, even though I funded them, most of them with grants in the early years in the 25 countries. the investment capital takes it to a whole nother level, as you know.
So I know you shared before, and I'm sure you probably have a ton of stories, but can you just give us an example, like in Guatemala, say, like what is a business that a woman would have there that she could, take $100 loan and do something with, like just to give us an idea.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, they're farmers. They have livestock, chickens, and goats is a big thing. Sewing machines, they're artisans, they're street hawkers. They have little shops, little restaurants. It's very much informal sector, inner village activity in the marketplace, selling used clothes. I mean, they're so amazingly resourceful. It's remarkable to see how far they can stretch. And very often they'll have multiple businesses. So they'll be maybe even working with their husband to raise some farm animals, and then they're sewing or doing art products. Guatemala is world famous for their beautiful artisan sector. So often they'll have multiple businesses, and they're just amazing. They're little hustlers in the street. Little economic engines all over the world.
And I think you're spot on with that. And I know anecdotally, my great grandmother came over from Ireland when she was 16 because of the potato famine. And when they arrived at Ellis Island at that time, all the signs in the city said no Irish need apply. And so she met my grandfather at that time, and they ended up moving out on Long Island, and entrepreneurs because they had to, and they had chickens and sold eggs, and they had like the first gas station, and they would do taxi driving, and he was a bricklayer. And so they were, kind of anything you could do to make money is just what you do. And it's interesting. I think women are amazingly resourceful.
Well, now I see why this resonates with you. I don't think I knew that.
And so, well, and it's I love doing these things because sometimes I don't know, you don't know inside like what your background is and what's going to connect. And
yeah,
and so I'm interested, like, so then what do women in the Philippines do? Is it the same, or is there a different
thing? Probably a little higher end. I mean, you might even have somebody who has a beauty shop, a little small beauty shop, or a little small restaurant, or a rickshaw, or she rents out her motorcycle, or her husband works for her and helps, deliver goods to people in a rickshaw or a motorcycle. So a little higher end activity in the Philippines, but still, I mean, you have extreme poverty. So a lot of farmers, a lot of, people who have a little stall in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting just for people listening, like the scale. So it's similar problems, but I mean, obviously the level of poverty is hugely different. But even here, we have our small business administrations, and we have those things for people who are wanting to start their businesses, because no matter where you are, you still have these hurdles to overcome. And, it takes money to make money, unfortunately. And you don't have access. Like one of the things that hit me, I remember listening to Mitt Romney back when he was running against Obama, and he just kind of offhand said, well, why don't people just borrow money from their dad to buy their first house? And I was like, okay, just different reality. And he wasn't trying to be elitist. It was just like, that was his world. He couldn't understand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people are shocked even to find out that women couldn't go get a credit card or a bank account not too long ago. Right. I have an aunt who was the first female urologist in the world, board certified, and worked at Sloan Kettering, and she couldn't get a condo in her name in New York City. She couldn't get a bank account or a credit card. They told her to go to a department store and start to build credit by buying some shoes on credit. Those stories are still with me. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that women in our own country didn't have access to any finance without a husband or a father to co-sign.
Well, and it was shocking for me. In 1972 was the year I was born, but that year Ruth Bader Ginsburg took on a case and changed it so that women in the military earned the same pay as men. And that floored me. I was like, because I've been living on the back of that decision. But in 72, there was a woman working, and she thought it was just a mistake on her pay stub because she didn't get the same pay for housing that the guy she was sitting with. And she was told, you're lucky we let you serve.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just, so things have shifted a lot. And so it's amazing. Like the work you're doing is really powerful, and it's very inspiring. And one of the things I really liked about what you offered was, I was looking at Christmas gifts, and, and as you get older, people kind of get to the space where they don't need stuff anymore. And I loved it as a great gift to give to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to give you this bond. You're going to hear about all the good stuff that this money is doing. So you've created like this whole avenue of let me do something meaningful and create a gift that's meaning. Like I like to find these win-win relationships. And I think what you've done with Capital Sisters is created this way that everybody's getting a chance to win, like all the way up and down the process.
It's really rewarding, I have to tell you. I think this whole idea of blended capital, impact investing, gender lens investing, socially responsible investing, divestiture, I think it really resonates with people that, capitalism is a wonderful thing. It can be fair. It can level the playing field. It creates significant systemic change, but you have to monitor it. You have to know where your money is, as you guys say, as sleeping at night. You need to know that the money is doing good and not harm. And so I love this whole new movement around the consciousness of capital. It's huge. It's absolutely growing in leaps and bounds, the whole socially responsible investing industry. And I'm just a piece of that. But
right.
I think the gender lens piece is so powerful because it's a way to include women. And women are a fabulous investment. I mean, that's why we don't serve men, is that men don't have as high of a repayment rate, frankly. And this the same with the man that started this, Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize. He said, well, I don't serve men because their repayment rate is 40%, and the women's repayment rate is 99%. So, and it could be just because women don't have any other alternative. I mean, I can't claim we're any better than men. Maybe it's just that they can't access any other. If they don't pay that back, they're done. So men have other alternatives. Who knows what causes what, but anyway, we do just serve women, and it's been really incredibly rewarding. I chaired the first ever Gender Lens Investing Symposium in Denver a couple of years ago, and we brought together everybody who's got an investment fund with a gender lens, and it was everything from my little $100 loans. We had the Philippines there represented, to the PAX Women's World Fund and the multi-billion-dollar funds. Everybody who's putting some kind of a gender lens on one of their products, and it was just phenomenal. It was the most exciting thing. I mean, the whole landscape is alive and well.
That's wonderful. So we are running out of time. How can people get a hold of you and Capital Sisters if they've gotten inspired and want to get involved?
Well, they should go to our website, capitalsisters.org. Definitely. There's some information there on how to get involved. The primary thing we're looking for right now is donations. If I get enough donations, I can do a bond sale. If I can't get the donations, I can't do the bond sale. So that's what we're looking at. We're hoping to do another bond sale in the fall, at least $100,000. And in order to do that, I need donations to pay for the expenses of running the management fund. Because as I said, we don't earn any interest on our loan capital.
Okay, wonderful. And I know that you've given us a link to a nice video that we're going to put up and make available so everybody can watch that as well. So Patricia, as we head out, if there's like one takeaway concept that you would like everybody to walk away from this discussion, what would that be? Women are a fabulous investment, women business owners. And the best way to solve poverty is microfinance, in my opinion. Those little tiny business loans, there's a lot of them and small amounts of money, but it can have more impact than a few big investments, in bigger businesses. They employ people, they educate their children, they put the money back into the business, they expand into the business, they get together and then build a well in the center of the marketplace, very much like I was doing in the Peace Corps. They'll take care of their own community. That's the takeaway. Put the women in the driver's seat. They know how to drive it. They know how to succeed like nobody, even hopefully with the Taliban. We're seeing that they can survive. They're amazing. They'll do anything to support their children. And that's why we're in this business, really. So you just have inspired me. I believe in the law of attraction. And I think, what you put out in the world comes back. So you have created this amazing opportunity for people to put goodness out in the world, to share a little bit of their success with other people. I was just meeting with a CPA this week, and he had a similar, I think, idea where he found with him personally and with his clients that tithe with their church, that they just make that part of the giving part of their process. He's like, it's anecdotal, but they do better. They're successful. They're less stressed about life. And for me, in my world, this is where I like to tithe. This is, I think, a way that I like to give back, and it helps women. And I think it's just you've created a nice way. If you go, I want to support and give back and add that to my whole financial bubble, a little bit of giving, you've created a great way to do that. So I'm just very inspired, and I really appreciate you sharing your education with us today.
Well, thank you, Tara. I really appreciate you bringing me into this wonderful live stream. It's exciting. But I mean, the bottom line really is giving is the gift to us. When we give, we get the gift. It's such a joy. It's such a joy to live like this. It's much better than reading my financials every month. How much did I make? No. How many people did we actually empower to be the best that they can be? Unwrap the gift that they were meant to be.
Yes, I love it.
That's really the payment.
So everybody, don't forget that you can contact Patricia with Capital Sisters directly. We've put her contact information. Patricia, if you'll just tell us that website one more time.
Capitalsisters.org. One word, capitalsisters.org. And you'll see it in the chat too as well. So let me know that you found out about me through Tara. That's helpful because I get a lot of emails.
Right. You don't need another email.
Well, it depends. Depends on what's behind that email.
Send a donation.
Yes, please. But say Tara. That helps.
So thank you so much. So don't forget that you can share this interview with all of your friends who weren't able to listen in right now. And this is also going to be a podcast shortly that'll be available on Apple and Google Play and Amazon and Spotify. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about all your success with this. I would love to see a lot of people do some donations, even if it's small. Every little bit helps. And I will look forward to sharing our topic with you next time.
Okay.
Can't wait to hear about all your success.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you again.
Bye, everyone.